Okay, wherever you're sitting or standing or laying down, you could lay down, just don't fall asleep. So just get yourself comfortable and take 3 really deep breaths that reach all the way down to your toes. You know, all the way in. Puff yourself right up, even your armpits, even the middle of your back. Let that out. Okay, another deep breath. All the way in, puff yourself up. And then all the way down to your toes. And then let it out. And then a third one. Deep, deep, deep breath in. Feel yourself puff right up. And then let that air out. And then after that, just breathe your own natural breathing. Okay? And just relax all the way through yourself. And as you relax, like try to turn your attention inward to the core of yourself. So we're going to start by kind of recalling, going back in time to one of the earlier meditations we did, in which we became aware that we were standing in this huge ocean of energies. This was originally the radiation meditation, and we were in this huge ocean of particles and waves, minuscule particles of light and millions of little waves of frequency that were moving in all directions, up and down and back and forth, and some of them in little whirlpools or vortices, but all of them moving right through you. So just remember that ocean of particles of light and waves of frequency, and remember that we zoomed in to look very carefully at one of those waves and notice that it had a particle riding that wave, just like a guy on a surfboard rides a wave in the ocean. And then we zoomed out far enough for you to see that your body was part of that huge ocean of light, and there were no boundaries between you and that ocean of light. Where you were, what you call yourself, there was just an increase in the denseness of the waves that you call me, yourself. And the big thing that we were trying to realize in that exercise was that you were really just a location in the ocean of frequencies, and that your name was your quote-unquote address in that eternal ocean. And, of course, your reason for being was to enjoy whatever was possible with these frequencies and to learn to maintain your location and wherever you happen to put your consciousness. When you're one with that great ocean, and you just have a small address on the day-to-day basis, you can put your consciousness anywhere in that huge ocean and also have a temporary address. So keep that in mind. So one of the things, there's a picture here now that I want you to remember as well. As you looked at the place where your own personal frequencies were most concentrated, what we did back then was to notice that what you had always thought of as a body really looked more like a basket or a woven framework of frequencies with all kinds of particles moving around inside the frame, as well as just riding on through. And at that time, you were asked to also become aware of the intense sound of buzzing or humming created by all those frequencies and all that motion. And then to listen in a little closer in order to notice that all those particles riding those waves of frequency were actually communicating with one another. They were sharing who they were and what they did best, and reporting any changes in their motion or position within the local body or the structure that it was within, which is you. So in that experience, you were to realize that this big mass of particles was deeply alive and aware of itself as a unique and individual region, and that every single particle and wave was wired to cooperate, and that in fact they lived to cooperate with one another just for the joy of creating new patterns. So now what we want to keep in mind is the fact that every material thing that exists has these same characteristics. Everything is made up of a framework of particles and waves in constant motion. All of those particles and waves are communicating with one another. And they communicate because they are seeking ways to cooperate with one another. And every single thing experiences great joy in being part of a pattern. And you, as part of that great pattern, are part of everything. And we'll need that when we get to the reactors. So, in other words, all particles and waves in constant motion, communicating with one another, all of them seeking to evolve, to be of greater service. And with that information firmly in your mind, now, let us imagine that we're going to the edge of the great Pacific Ocean. So see yourself standing on the sand. If you have shoes on your feet, take a moment to bend down and take off your shoes. And your socks, if you have socks on as well. And just lay them aside. And for just a moment, stand on that sand. Feel that sandy beach under your feet. And then walk into the water very slowly, moving until you're about chest deep in the water. And then once you get out there and you're really up to your armpits in water, stretch your arms out to the side as if you're resting your arms on the surface of that water. Feel your palms even on the surface of that water. And just feel the presence and the power of that ocean. And send a greeting to that great body of water. And tell Packy that you have come to visit once again. And ask her how she is. And then, be sure you listen for an answer. And then continue walking, going deeper and deeper into the ocean. Walking along the sand at the bottom. And keep going, moving through the deep. Keep your breathing slow and easy. And begin moving in the direction of the islands of Japan. Watching for fish and sea creatures as you move along. And as you move through the depths, remember one of our earlier walks that I had to develop eyes on the sides of your head and eyes on your shoulder and eyes on the ends of each one of your toes. So I want you to reinstall those eyes and keep all of them open. Eyes on the sides of your head as well as on the front. Eyes on your shoulders, eyes on the ends of each one of your toes. And as you walk through the ocean, I want you to be able to see in almost every direction. And I want you to pay attention to the many kinds of sea animals moving by or swimming around you. And notice once again the huge variety of life filling the ocean at every level, shallow and deep. Big fish, tiny fish, swordfish, whales, sharks, dolphins. So anyway, just stop for a minute. Stop moving for just a moment and just, take some pleasure in watching those creatures, whatever they are. maybe an octopus, flying fish, an eel, a dolphin, a stingray, a crab. And just kind of watch and learn, how do these guys live? What do they do? What do they think is normal? So, and keep watching and remember what you see. And then become aware, just like before, that some of the creatures seem to be quietly watching you as well. And stay very quiet and peaceful inside and just observe them steadily, kind of communicating greetings, back and forth to them. Continue to breathe slowly and easily, though. Remembering to stay quiet inside yourself. And as you're watching the sea creatures around you, see if you can spot any of the creatures that you might have talked to before. Just to say a quick hello and acknowledge the connection between you. So, just kind of stop for a minute, communicating what you can with who you can, and then before moving on, send out a telepathic question to them, asking them how they're doing, and listen carefully inside yourself for any answers that they might send back to you. So just take a moment to communicate. And then tell them you are still working to heal the great water body of the Pacific, and that you bring great love to all of them and the world they live in. Tell them that you're on your way to the nuclear reactors that have caused all the problems for them. And ask them to send good energy to you as you work on these reactors. And then wish them well and continue moving along toward the coastline of Japan. Now, as you're coming across the ocean, if the angle of your movement toward Japan requires you to cross the Mariana Trench, just swim across the trench. Don't walk down into that and then back up the other side. It's too far down and too steep. Just swim smoothly, slowly, easily across that trench until you're back over flat sand and you can continue walking through the ocean deep. And then just keep walking. And as you walk, notice that the water is changing color. It's getting shallower. And it's also feeling more active because of the radioactivity in the water. So as you move through that water, send out quiet emanations, kind of like vibes of peace and compassion to the water and any physical creatures living in that area, including kind of a peace and compassion to the particles of radioactive material in that water. Don't stop moving though, just keep moving as you send out these vibes. And keep moving directly toward Fukushima Prefecture on the eastern coast of Honshu. That's the main island of Japan. And keep moving until you arrive near the shoreline where the remains of the 6 reactors once stood. And as you get close to that shoreline, notice the long U-shaped seawall that was built to prevent waves up to 19 feet high. I think it was supposed to prevent 19-foot waves from washing onto the land where all the reactors and their backup power systems were. You know, the problem was that the tsunami was 45 or 46 feet high, so, the seawall was not effective. But at this point, just climb up onto that seawall and look around at the shore. Look toward the shore. And as you look toward that shoreline where the 6 reactors once stood, Look way off to the far right, and you'll see reactors 5 and 6. And, they were not nearly as affected. But almost directly in front of you, you're going to see reactors 1 through 4. Reactor 1 is going to be the one on your near right, and then 2 is to the left of that, and then 3, and then 4. So turn your attention to the remains of reactor number 1 and just kind of survey the damage there. Look at what they've done to clean up, maybe. And then walk along the seawall, which is, turns and goes right up to the shore. And keep going until you reach the land. And right there, right at reactor 1. And then go inside of reactor number 1 and just look around. Notice the, whatever damage there was to the inside of the building. And try to find the remaining, they call it a containment structure. And that containment structure is what holds the fuel rods. And it should be in the center of the building. And, just see if you can get right inside that containment structure. Just kind of float right through any remaining walls, whether they're cement or steel. When you're in a state of consciousness, you can go anywhere. And once you get inside that containment structure, notice any details, anything of interest. Are the rods still there? Are the things that held the rods in place and kept them from touching one another, are those still there? And, and if they are, what shape are they in? If they aren't there, look down in the bottom and see whatever you can see down there at the bottom. And notice any details and things of interest, and remember what you see. We're in reactor number 1. I'll just give you a minute to look around. Okay. And then very slowly pull out of reactor number 1 until you're back outside the building. And right next door, you'll find reactor number 2. So move your focus to reactor number 2. And look around at whatever you can see on the outside of that structure, and, noticing what condition it's in. Don't hesitate to walk around the entire structure. And then move your consciousness inside the plant or structure and look around, noting whatever you see. Look at the walls, look at the piping, look at the equipment and machinery and whatever else is in there. And then find the containment chamber where the fuel rods would have been kept, and go inside that containment chamber. And look around in there. See whatever you can see. Are the rods still there? Anything. Is there something visual? Is there something auditory? Is there a smell? Is there a taste? And is there a feeling in that containment structure? If the rods are not held in place, where are they? Note what you see inside reactor 2's containment structure, I think it's called. And remember what you see. And then pull your attention out of reactor number 2, leave the containment chamber, and then the building until you're back outside. And then right beside that is reactor number 3. So turn your attention to reactor number 3 and look at the outside structure that remains of number 3. And then go inside the building. Look around. What do you see? What's working, what's not working? And then find the containment structure for the fuel rods and go inside that containment structure, just like in the other two, noting what you see and the presence or maybe even the absence of fuel rods and whatever conditions exist in that containment structure. Are they there? What are they doing? Are they not there? And then, once you've made a note of what's going on in reactor 3, then withdraw from that containment center and then go back outside the building itself and turn your attention to reactor number 4. You're right outside, number 4. So look around the outside structure and then go inside and see what's going on or what you think went on. Look around at the conditions inside building number 4. Go then to the containment center. As you move into that containment center, look at the walls on the inside, the surfaces of any kind. Look at the fuel rods, if there's any there, or any other equipment. And when you're finished looking around inside that containment structure, go back outside and look at the grounds surrounding the plant. Then, choose one of the reactors as the one that you are going to enter and sit and communicate with. It could be reactor number 1, 2, 3, or 4. But go back to that reactor and enter the structure that is there. You've been in all of them, you've looked around, but now you're going to go directly into the containment structure where the fuel rods were and find a place to sit. Try to get yourself comfortable, sitting with your legs folded like you would if you were in meditation. And then close your eyes and take a deep breath. And with your consciousness, reach out to the remains of the fuel rods in that structure. Tell the fuel rods your name. It's a rule in consciousness. You always announce who you are. It's just a way of being polite. And then apologize to the particles that make up those fuel rods, telling them you're sorry for forcing them into an unnatural relationship with one another that was so dangerously explosive. Tell them that we humans were trying to find ways to produce electricity so we would have light and heat and air conditioning and the power to produce things, and that now we're looking for other, more natural ways to fill our needs for power. Ask the remains of those fuel rods for forgiveness. Forgiveness for our ignorance and our silliness in thinking we could handle anything that might happen. And tell those rods that we've learned some important lessons. One being the foolishness of trying to compact their exuberant power into such a small space as a fuel rod. And another being the foolishness of placing two giant powers right next to one another, the compacted fuel and the Great Pacific Ocean. Tell them that we understand now that when you put two powers next to one another, they're going to interact. And we didn't realize what that interaction might involve. Tell them you're very glad for the lessons learned. Very glad. And the wisdom gained. Wrap your mind around those rods as if almost like you're petting them like a cat. And tell them that you're extremely grateful for the work that they did and for the electricity they provided. And tell them that we humans accept full responsibility for the harm and the contamination of the earth and the sky and the water, and ask them if they would be willing to cooperate with us in helping to clean up the mess. Tell them we're asking for their cooperation in shifting themselves to a configuration and a consciousness that is healing. And listen deeply for their answer. Ask them to show you what we might do to further that healing. And maybe show you in pictures. Words are good too, but pictures are very good. And watch and listen for those pictures. I'll give you a minute to just look and listen. Then, whatever that answer was, even if there was no answer, thank those fuel rods for their cooperation in allowing themselves to become a fuel rod in the first place. And ask them for their cooperation in shifting themselves to a configuration and a consciousness that does no harm to Mother Earth or our friend, the Great Pacific Ocean. Tell the rods that maybe we needed the lessons, the wisdom, and the electricity they provided. But we are now releasing the particles and the atoms in those rods to return to a more natural distribution. Ask the rods to use whatever remaining power they have to accelerate the disintegration of the rods without causing any harm to people, place, air, or water. Ask them to let that be an internal disintegration that's accomplished quietly and smoothly, both for them and for us. And then thank the big containment structures that did their best to keep that radiation from doing further harm. For just a moment, put your hand on the surface you're sitting on and just feel the flow of your own, we'll just call it love, compassion, gratitude for all those structures that have worked so hard to serve us. And then kind of reach your mind out to the big barrels of water sitting around the reactors, water that has been used to keep the reactors cool. Tell that water in the barrels that we are working on the cleanup, and soon everyone and everything will be returned to their rightful place and their rightful activities in the world. And then say goodbye to each one of the reactors, the one you are sitting in, as well as the others that were so damaged. Tell them you are grateful for the service they once provided, and that you're going to hold a determined space of love within you for full healing for all concerned. And then see yourself slowly rising into the air above the reactors. You're leaving the reactor structure, the containment structure, and the reactor around it, the building around it. And as you rise, imagine you are reaching out to all those beings who work in the service of the light. And ask them to join with us for just a moment in order to fill all the fuel rods in all 4 reactors, or whatever remains of them, with the power and grace to help those rods transform instantly into healing golden light. And just continue hovering in the air there, and see this shower of golden light floating down from the sky into each of the reactors, into the fuel rods, into the barrels of stored water, and just surrounding that entire area with a diffuse golden light. And hold yourself in that light as well for a few moments. And then say thank you to all the beings who have joined with us to help heal the situation. And then give yourself directions to return to your body wherever you left it. Travel back to it slowly, very slowly, floating gracefully right over the ocean. And then enter into your physical vehicle, making sure you're in straight and fully aligned. And then take a few moments to reorient yourself and stretch when you're ready. Just stretch your body to reactivate yourself. And as you return, make a mental note to return to the reactors and the fuel rods from time to time, just to support their efforts to quickly transform themselves. And then I'll give you a few moments to just reorient and come back.